Because
Yes,
okay.
done.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and good afternoon to everyone joining this webinar. My name's Nigel Dean and I'm the Marketing Director for Spire Payments. Joining me today on this call is Carlos Gomez Osuna, who's our Security and Compliance Engineer. So between us we'll be having a 30-minute presentation, and after that presentation there will be 10 minutes for questions from all of those of you listening, and we will answer as many as we can in the time. Now, to actually pose questions to myself or Jose, if you look on the right of your screen, you will see a chat box that you can open by pressing the plus. Now what that will allow you to do is type in any questions and send them, and you can do that during the whole webinar. So what I'd like you to do is just to check technology is working, is if you could just type in where you are calling from, what country, then I can see that everything's working. So if you could do that now, please. Okay, we've got the UK, that's pretty obvious. We're going to have people from the UK. Spain is on board. Czech Republic, Poland, Croatia, France, Lebanon, Serbia. Okay, excellent. Wow, thank you. I think the system's working now, so that's superb. So what I'm going to be doing is Carlos is actually going to be operating the slide. So every time the slide transition will happen, I'll be asking for another slide, so apologies for that. Okay, Carlos, next slide, please. Okay, chip and pin mPOS. Obviously, mPOS is currently one of the hot topics in the payment space. So today's webinar, what we're going to do is focus on the 5 key factors for the success of both developing an mPOS device and also choosing one if you would like to acquire a device or build an estate. So as we can see on this slide, we're looking at design, personalization, security, development environment, and contactless capability. Next slide, please. So just a quick slide about Spire Payments for any of those of you that may not be aware of us, or even if you are, just to give a recap of who we are and what we do. Spire Payments is currently the 3rd largest traditional POS vendor in Europe, and we are also very strong in the mPOS arena, and hence why we're doing this webinar. In 2011 we were formed, and then in 2012 we acquired a business called Thyron Systems, who developed the world's first chip and pin mPOS device called the POSmate Smart. Now, since that time, we have developed our proposition and we've gone to a large number of markets. So as of today, we've got over 20 mPOS estates globally, all chip and pin, and we link to over 12 payment gateways. So as you can see, as a terminal manufacturer, designer, developer, and also the ability to provide payment solutions with third parties, we've sort of lived the dream of mPOS, as I'd like to say. Next slide, please. Okay, the first key factor, design. Now, this may seem a very broad title for a slide, but if we go back to the early days of mPOS, the drive for mPOS was to provide micro merchants with the ability to take card payments. That was it. It was very simple. So the early products that were designed and developed, basically, that's all they did. They took a card payment, they linked to a mobile device, and that was it. Now, over the past 2 or 3 years, it's become very clear that mPOS does not only address this market sector. Now, sure enough, in certain environments, like for example in India, where we've had a lot of success, a micro merchant solution gets incredibly good traction. It just needs to be a robust device, very simple to use, long battery life, but it has to be incredibly cost sensitive. Now, on the other side of the coin, what we've seen in more developed card payment markets is larger retailers and merchants have taken mPOS as almost an alternative to like a traditional Wi-Fi terminal. And the reason they've done this is one, cost, because obviously the devices are less expensive. But secondly, these devices are linked to tablets rather than mobile phones, which allows them to use very high power applications, which helps them manage their customer base, stock control, etc., etc. So what Spire Payments has done is it's developed two new products, each of them targeting these areas. So we have a micro merchant product called the SPM2, and we have a product for larger merchants which is called the SPM20. Now what I'm going to do now, if we go to the next slide, Carlos, what Carlos is going to do is just run through the differences on a technical level of these two devices, and I'll throw in a few questions as well if I just need something clarifying. So over to you, Carlos.
Hi Nigel, and thanks, and hello everyone, and welcome. As you said, yes, designing an mPOS device is a bit tricky because you end up having to address two different subsegments of the market for the mPOS for processing payments. The two devices or the two subsegments share a few core mPOS design features. That's basically, as you said, the micro merchant needs to take a payment. That's true regardless of you being a micro merchant or a big retail chain or a supermarket or whatever it is that you are. So there are a few core features that you need to have. You need to have, let me just open the Doodle tool so I can guide you through the design. Obviously, they need to have chip and pin capabilities with the MaxStripe as a backup. They need to be secure in communications, and they need to offer strong security for card payment transaction. That's the whole point of having these devices instead of using any old mobile phone to try and process a card. That would be actually not allowed by Visa or any other big payment brand. In this core mPOS design features, you also have a very strong focus on, as you said, on cost. Cost is important for the micro merchant because if it's not highly cost efficient, they are not going to want it. There's no way you're going to be able to make a significant deployment out there for micro merchants. And in terms of cost, these devices obviously they are hardware-wise, they're simple, but they need to offer lots of security. But also, it's important to keep costs down by not having to move devices around. It's important that someone can receive a device from factory and use it straight out of the box without having to go through different personalization centers or different places so that they load different pieces of software. That's extremely important. That's what we call plug and play from factory. That is different from what a traditional POS would do, because traditional POS tend to have a longer lifespan in terms of what they do once they're manufactured. That's a big difference. And also, sorry, I sensed you wanted to make a question there, didn't you?
Okay, yeah, sorry, I was trying not to interrupt you, Carlos. I mean, you're saying plug and play factory. So what that is the product we're designing is just basically they open the box as you did with a mobile phone. You then switch the device on. It would then pair and then be ready to use. So no software needs to be downloaded, no configuration of keys or any security. So really it's seamless. Is that what you're saying?
Basically, yes. It's the fact that you can ship straight from factory to the micro merchant if you wished to. Is that the micro merchant can receive things straight from the factory without the payment processor or the acquirer having to worry about receiving the device from the factory, doing something with it in a personalization center, and then send it over again to the micro merchant or the retail chain.
Okay, I can see that, because like when I receive a mobile phone myself, I just want it to work. I don't read the instructions, I just plug it in and I want it to work. The other thing on these two lists is they look very similar, these lists, which might confuse the people watching. But on the contactless payments, you have a term contactless ready. Now,
yes.
What does that really mean? Is that the same as like an HD ready TV, for example?
Not quite. What I mean by contactless ready is that when you have a higher end mPOS device like the SPM20 on the right hand side, contactless is usually a must. This is going to be a POS substitute, so it needs to be able to process contactless. When you go into the micro merchant, cost is king. So you want to have a device that can be as cost efficient as possible, maybe, but not including the contactless features. What you need to do is make sure that if you want to move into contactless, then you can do it seamlessly. So the device that you deploy needs to be able to process contactless payments. So that's what I mean by contactless ready. You can have two different slight part numbers or different versions of the same device, but basically the idea is that the device from design perspective is ready to take contactless payments, so that you can enable that as quickly as possible in your estate.
Okay. So in markets where contactless is mandated, as many people know listening to this call, the SPM2, for example, can be contactless enabled from the factory. But in other markets, say where it isn't mandated at the moment, an even more cost-effective product could be deployed without that functionality. That's what we're basically saying, isn't it? Yeah.
Precisely, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, obviously, looking at these two lists, they look very similar. What other functionality does the SPM20 have that really makes it different to the SPM2?
Okay, well, if you move from the core mPOS functionalities, which is basically to take secure payments, the SPM20 needs to have a few additional features that a micro merchant mPOS would not necessarily need. First and foremost, when you're looking for a traditional POS, you're looking to do more things than just process payments. Maybe you want to do loyalty applications, or you want to be able to process to show QR codes or other sorts of on the spot advertisement, for example. So the SPM2 in that regard, the lower end is a very simple. I take payments through any card interface device. The SPM20, however, and the higher end mPOSs do allow acquirers to develop their own applications so that they can add additional functionality. Obviously, having more horsepower is also nice because if you're going to do more things and you have multiple applications, you need to have additional cryptography and functionalities. Crucially, if you're going to use this not just as a queue buster, but also as a POS device on the till, then docking capabilities is a must. And obviously, when you're talking about a retail chain, you need extended battery life. You're not going to take just a few payments a day. You're going to take hundreds and hundreds of them. So your device needs to be able to do that on one battery charge.
Excellent. Okay, so really the SPM20, what we're looking at is a traditional POS terminal, in a way, which has had the printer removed, the comms removed, and just a Bluetooth link. So it gives that capability.
Indeed.
Okay. Right then, so if we can move on to the next slide, and then I can do some talking then. So thanks, Carlos. Okay, so the next factor, personalization. Well, mPOS, unlike POS technologies before it, has really made payment personal. An mPOS device is a device that someone has in their pocket. It's usually very personal to that particular user, and really it's following the model of the mobile phone. So if we see there, affordability, mobility, pocket sized, choice of color, and to give you an idea of this, we supply products to multiple markets. So to India, for example, we supply a product that is a shade of purple, much like Ribena actually, whereas in France we supply to a particular customer a white device that is sprayed in a high gloss finish, very high end, superb packaging, and really it gives that Apple sort of look and feel to it. Now this is very different to traditional POS, because in the world of traditional POS, having unique customized products is a headache, because it means increased stock holding for a manufacturer, it can mean longer lead times, but really in mPOS it has to be. So therefore you have to provide a lot of options. Now the last point here where it says key injection, what I want Carlos to do is expand on this, because this is a subject that is often overlooked. Now an mPOS device has to be as secure as a traditional pin pad in a multi-lane environment or a traditional POS device. And the thing is, this is a very complex and potentially costly process. So for mPOS, this has need to be reviewed and actually implemented in a slightly different way and provide the same level of security. So Carlos, let me hand over to you, and then you can explain at a high level, I hope, about key injection. And I'll ask you questions if I get confused. Thank you.
Okay, yes, as you said yourself, personalization when it comes to these devices is not just the choice of color or branding or whatever it is that you want to put out there on the street, but also the fact that in order to make payments secure, you need to inject keys, cryptographic keys to do encryption, message authentication, things like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how this is done for a traditional POS device, and then I'll try to show you what the key differences are for an mPOS device. So I'm going to start here with a very simple presentation, with a very simple slide in which you have, as you can see up here, this is a device being put together at the factory. This is, well, all the electronics and all the plastics are assembled. Some software is put in the device as well. And also because of regulatory requirements, we need to put a unique transport token on each device. This is not a token in the physical sense, but just a little secret, electronic secret on it, so that it can be authenticated as a proper and authentic Spire device. This is happening on one side of the world, whereas in the other, down here, you have an acquirer sending you their keys for the POS device. Now, acquirers send you their keys, and you need to store them and use them in a very, very procedural and very stringent and secure way. What you basically do is you receive your keys, and those keys are stored in a secure facility, what we call a key injection secure room. We use all sorts of safes, all sorts of controls, physical security, training. This requires very specialized, very highly trained people. So, and this is happening, let's say the factory is in, I don't know, Malaysia or China or something like that, and this is happening somewhere in the United Kingdom, just for the sake of discussion. And you need to bring these two together. So basically what usually happens is that you need to take the two into the same or an additional secure room. This device travels all across the world, comes into a secure room, and then operators need to take the keys that they have received from the bank, and using a secure device called a key loading device, which authenticates the device that is being received from the factory using this transport token I've spoken of. There's a little bit of song and dance here in cryptographic terms, and in the end, the POS device has its keys loaded and is ready to be sent out. Now,
okay, Carla, can I just interrupt you there?
Sure.
All these keys and things. Now, a key for those people that are listening is basically an alphanumeric string of data, isn't it, of information? So it's not a physical key, it's just a piece of data.
Yes, basically it's just a bit of data with some specific and interesting mathematical properties that allow you to protect data, other data with it.
Okay. And in this traditional POS format, this transport token that we put in to the device, that basically allows the device to be secure during its transport stage to another environment. Is that right? So,
exactly.
So if the lorry was hijacked and those devices were stolen, they couldn't be used. That's the principle, is it not?
That's the principle, yeah. The principle is that if someone tries to tamper with this device, the token is lost, or if someone tries to produce knockoffs of our devices, not unheard of,
yes.
They won't have the transport token, they won't be authenticated as one of our devices.
Okay, I'll let you get on now. Sorry for the interruption.
That's okay. So this is what happens with mPOSs as well, is that there's no much difference. You still need to put it together, obviously, that they don't grow on trees. And then you need to send them to a key injection facility. Now, the trick here is that these devices, and particularly this SPM2 that I've shown here, this is the lower end micro merchant focused POS. This one is very cost sensitive. So having to load a transport token at the factory and having to ship it all the way to another different secure facility somewhere else before it actually reaches the merchant is really costly, and it's not a very nice solution. So what we're going to do is we're going to shorten all this way. This is going to be shortened so that everything happens at the factory floor. Obviously, this adds some burden on the factory and the manufacturer in terms of having specialized, highly trained people and having to have some additional facilities. But what our impression and our experience dictates that this is actually the most cost-effective way of making sure that the mPOS reaches the micro merchant in time and in cost.
Okay. Superb. Okay, I'm very conscious of time here, Carla, so I'm going to have to go to the next slide now, because I know you could talk for months about key injection. So,
I know.
okay, so if you can go to the next slide. Now, security. Now, this may sound very similar to what we've spoken about before, but what I'm talking about here is the physical security of the device, really. Now, as we all know, all of us have been to a lot of conferences, and there are so many new payment methods coming onto the market, not only mPOS, but in a lot of other environments. Now, security is the cornerstone of payments. It always will be. So what we have is we have a balancing act here of maintaining security, but also against that having simplicity of use, low device cost, etc., etc. And quite often these two things are working against one another. And as we've seen in the past, not with our products I must say, but breaches in security do damage the industry as a whole, and they do damage the propagation of new technologies. So secure and sustainable solutions have to be built on security expertise. So what I'm going to do is hand over to Carlos again, who's going to just talk a little bit about the actual devices themselves and what is actually implemented with them for this security aspect. So Carlos, next slide, please.
Yes, as you say, security is paramount. These are not just simple PIN entry devices. These are secure PIN entry devices that need to take and process payments. What I've actually omitted the mPOS from these slides for the time being, because what I wanted to show is that the usage model of an mPOS is not that different from a retail PIN pad on a supermarket checkout line, for example. These devices, as well as mPOS devices, need to pass through a series of certifications, and the most stringent ones are security ones. Now, the standard for this is the PIN transaction security standard for payment transactions, for point of interactions, as they call it. This standard mandates you to have a certain amount of protection on the physical side and also on the software side, so that devices cannot be tampered with or broken or pirated or things like that. Now, this is the same if it's a retail PIN pad or an mPOS device. The main difference in terms of security is how mPOS devices are actually used in the field. The picture you're seeing now is what would happen in a supermarket, for example. You have your computer here that's taking care of the checkouts, of the scan where all the products are passing through and everything else, and then you have your retail PIN pad taking care of the payment itself. This is all happening in a very controlled environment. You have a network in the supermarket. You are supposed to have, if you are doing IT properly, you have your controls on these computers, and they are owned by you. They are administrated by somebody. When you move into an mPOS environment, all of a sudden you're using a mobile phone, and not just a mobile phone, also managed by an organization, by a company, by an IT department. This is the mobile phone anyone can have. The taxi driver, a plumber, who knows. This is by definition an insecure device. There's no way you can consider this platform a secure device. This could be rooted, this could be full of viruses, malware, you name it, it has it. It's very insecure. And to this, you're going to connect your mPOS device.
Okay, Carlos, so suddenly we've connected a device that is going to take secure payments, but what it's going through is not secure at all. So is this where the keys come into play?
Basically, yes and no. There's additional security apart from the keys, obviously. First of all, yes, you do have keys, and keys are used to protect data, all payment data. And also you need to take into account that even if this device is jailbroken, is full of nasty things, this one here has gone through a specific security accreditation, which is optional to other devices, which is this, it's called SRED, Secure Exchange of Data, that extends and expands the security accreditation of a device to also cover how it protects account data and other data that is usually not mandated by the standard to be protected. This is so that all data that is sensitive data that is part of the payment leaves the mPOS only in a protected encrypted form, so it can pass through the mobile phone without any problem, without any sort of additional protection, and it can go all the way to the server, the backend server, wherever that may be, and there it is decrypted and processed in whatever way it needs to be processed for the payment to go on and be accepted.
Okay. So the actual card data information and card holder information is only ever in the clear, as I would call it, when it's in the secure area within our device or when it's in the secure room of the acquirer or card issuer.
Indeed.
Is that basically?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Right, okay. Again, conscious of time, so can we go to the next slide, please, Carlos? Thank you. Okay, development environment. Now, for one of my slides, this may sound a bit complex, but the application programming interface is basically the interface a software developer would use who would generate a mobile application on the mobile device. So if I want to deploy an mPOS solution, I would need a payment application on my mobile phone, which then talks to the chip and pin mPOS device. Now, the thing is here, to make that development as simple and as rapid and as cost-effective as possible, what you need is an application programming interface which meets all those criteria that's on this slide here. Now, for example, the typical example, so if I was a software developer in the mobile phone world, I would not have a clue about PIN encryption and PAN data, but the thing is, a very powerful API removes that requirement. So for example, I would say display amount, I would say get PIN, I would say transaction result equals approved. So it's that level of complexity and knowledge would be all that's required by an application developer. And this has been exploited incredibly well with our solutions because it has allowed providers to rapidly deploy products throughout different markets, for example. Now, again, Carlos, if you could go to your next slide and just delve a little bit deeper into that, please.
Yes, as you said, it is important that this is not, to understand that this is not a traditional payment environment in which you have perhaps a highly integrated acquirer or something like that. You will have people developing mobile applications for this, for taking payments, who will not necessarily know what a payment looks like on the inside or what EMV level 2 is and all that stuff. Obviously, it's not that they don't know, it's that they shouldn't need to know in order to make a payment application. Mobile phone developers and tablet developers and PC developers should be doing what they do best, which is provide with the very powerful, very nice GUI and all the functionalities that mobile phones are so good at providing. And the mPOS device should be taking care of the whole thing. As you said, it's not enough to just have an API that exposes the whole payment transaction, but it needs to encapsulate cases so that there is a message that say, okay, this is the amount, please process the payment using this card interface. Or not even that, just process the payment in whichever way you see fit. And the mPOS device should be able to just take that message and take care of the rest of it. Just show the message, present card, blah, 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 enter PIN, so that the message back to the mobile phone is, okay, here's the PIN, or here's the result of the payment transaction, connect your server and see if you can validate this. It is very, very important that we make sure that encapsulation is so that mobile developers do not need to know about the intricacies and inner working of a payment transaction. And not only that, but
okay, I just want to clarify. Oh, sorry, Carlos. I'm stopping you in mid-flow again.
It's all right.
It's just you said there regarding the PIN being sent back. Right, I just want to clarify that the mobile app would say check PIN if it's an offline PIN, and then the PIN wouldn't be passed back. It would just be confirmed or not confirmed.
Obviously, yes.
Yeah, that's fine. So, okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, it's also when you consider deploying these devices, an mPOS device, having a strong and encapsulated API is in my opinion, is a must. It's not just a nice to have, but it's also important that the API is consistent across the range, so that if you want to generate a payment solution that provides services not just to micro merchants but also to retailers, you can use the same application, the same API, the same functionalities in both devices, in higher end and lower end mPOSes. It is very important that they don't have to do anything additional or special just because they're changing their hardware.
Okay, so we've seen this. I mean, if I was someone listening to this webinar now and I was thinking I would just like to try mPOS and have a solution and just see what the adoption rate is, a very simple application could be developed on, say, the low-cost device, the SPM2, and once that starts to gain traction, they could seamlessly introduce the SPM20 for larger retailers with exactly the same interface.
Exactly, yes. They wouldn't have to touch the interface with the mPOS device at all.
Okay. Now, one thing that does confuse me, and I get asked this questions a lot, we're talking about an API here, but I also hear the term a lot, SDK, which is a software development kit, obviously. Now, obviously we have an SDK on our SPM20, so could you sort of explain to the audience what the difference is and what capabilities that provides us on that second platform?
Okay, as you said, an API is just the language that a device or a piece of software talks. So far we've talked about the API, the functions that a mobile phone would have in order to talk to an SPM2 or SPM20 through the Bluetooth link. An SDK, software development kit, is sort of like not just the language, but also the room in which you're going to speak the language. It's like the API is ingredients, and the SDK is your kitchen, where you're going to mix them and make your application. The SPM20, as you said, does allow you to not just use the mPOS API for processing payments, but it's a multi-application environment. If you wanted to develop, and if you want to develop on the SPM20 your application, what you need to do is you need to take our SDK, a software development kit, that's that whole set of tools, development environment, debuggers, all that sort of stuff. You install it, it's a program, you install it to your computer, and then you start typing code and writing your application. And in order to write your application, what you use is the functions that we provide for the SPM20. We follow the same principles here, is that the API inside the device does allow you to make use of all the functionality in the device without you having to worry too much about the hardware underneath and the CPU and all that stuff. It's a Linux device, and it should be fairly simple for anyone to pick up and play with it.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, again, time is against us, so could we go on to the next slide, Carlos, and then okay, so this is the last slide and the last factor that needs considering. Now, contactless is a challenge. Everyone knows that. So in the initial days of mPOS, where it was just mag stripe and chip and pin in European markets anyway, the solutions, many people started to develop solutions. But when the card schemes started to and are still mandating this requirement in many markets, it caught a lot of people out of hand, because this technology takes time and experience to develop. Now, in an mPOS device, we have this dilemma, and this is actually a question that's been raised, which we can answer on this slide as well. The question is, cost is king, but in some countries, contactless is mandated, and we know that. So therefore, if this is making the device more expensive, how do we attack the micro merchant sector? Now, in answer to that, what I would say is, the SPM2 that we've developed, contactless does add cost in hardware, but not too much. It does add some cost. It is really the accreditation that is the costly part of this. But fortunately, because we can use the same, Spire Payments can use the same libraries and functionality that we've used in our traditional POS range, we've managed to keep this at a minimum. And the SPM2 is so price sensitive that it's actually a disposable device. So we've managed to reduce the cost as much as physically possible. So, you know, if people are interested in that, I mean, by all means, get in contact with me afterwards, and I can put you in touch with our sales staff. But Carlos, can I just ask you, why is putting contactless in an mPOS device such a challenge?
Well, the first thing you need to realize is that these devices are by definition small. They fit in your hand. They're not your traditional chunky big button POS device. So fitting an antenna on these devices and complying with all the physical and electrical and functional requirements that Visa, MasterCard and American Express put out there for you to comply with, so you can sell this device, is not simple. As you say, that the trick here is to make sure that, okay, well, each device is going to be physically different, so the hardware, there's only so much you can reuse, but you can still reuse a lot of stuff. But the key is also that the fact that the libraries, as you said, and the software underneath is more or less the same. It only needs to be fine-tuned for each platform to work. So it is a challenge to get the first one going, but after that, it's actually once the physical challenge have been overcome, it's not too hard to just make sure that all your devices are contactless ready for your customers to use. Luckily and thankfully,
Okay.
we are all taking care of this part for the customers. They only need to worry about us sending the accreditation letters saying yes, this device is actually contactless and works with Visa, Mastercard, or whatever card scheme.
Okay. Okay, and I assume in our API that if that there's obviously instructions in there to talk about contactless. So it is just for a developer, it would just be this is a chip and pin transaction. It wouldn't be that. It's just this is a contactless transaction. So again, no expertise is needed for the application developer. Is that right?
Precisely, yes. We've brought it to the point where we've developed what we call a level 3 set of libraries, in which the calling application or the calling mobile phone doesn't need to worry too much about configuring the kernel or anything like that. They can just go and give a very high level message saying, please process this contactless transaction for me.
Excellent. Okay. Right. Okay. If we go on to the next slide now, that's the end of the presentation. So thank you very much, Carlos. Now, I have some questions that have been coming in, so thank you to everybody. We've got time for a couple of questions, but if when we run out of time and I haven't answered your question, we will come back to you directly. Okay. So the first question is the Bluetooth link between the mPOS device and the mobile phone secure? So can you sort of elaborate on that? Because I know we didn't touch on that, Carlos.
You're absolutely right. I'm quite surprised. Well, I'm not surprised this comes up. I'm surprised that we didn't actually mention it before. Bluetooth link is by definition and by certification secure. This is like with any other POS device in which you have Wi-Fi or Ethernet or anything like that. You need to prove that it's secure before you put it in the market. It goes the same way for Bluetooth. The only way you can connect to these devices is through an encrypted Bluetooth link. It is supported by every phone out there in the field already. So it doesn't actually add much of a burden. It's just a matter of pairing them up with well, I guess people are used to these things already with a set of numbers. It's very, very simple and it's very secure.
Okay, well that sort of leads in nicely to my next question, because you were asking, you were stating that the pairing of the device was very simple and straightforward. And another question that's come in around this is, do you use the audio jack as a connection for your products instead of Bluetooth to avoid any pairing issues? So I know for a fact we don't have any devices that link via audio jack, but if you could explain, Carlos, the technical reasons why we don't do that, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's first of all, audio jacks are meant to be audio outputs and microphones. So when it comes to transmitting data, obviously they're not going to be very fast or very reliable. If you're old enough to remember, we used to have tape recorders plugged to our computers a few years ago, and that wasn't very good. And there's also the fact of that ergonomics are not very good. You can't possibly design your mPOS device to fit to every audio jack out there in the field. So you end up having some sort of a wire or dangling out of your mPOS device. It's not very friendly, because the only other solution you can do is, and that's something I don't think people like very much, is that the micro merchant ends up not just handing the mPOS device, but also his or her personal telephone. And I think people will actually be somehow culturally against this. So we feel that wireless is the way to go for this.
Okay, superb. Time for one last question. I know I've got others, so apologies if I haven't asked it online. What is needed at the PSP acquire end, Carlos? So I guess what people are asking is at the acquire end different to traditional POS solutions? So if you could answer that, that'd be great.
Okay, without going into too much detail, not really.
Okay.
The transaction is still going to be an EMV level 2 transaction for you, or a contactless level 2 transaction, pay wave, pay pass, whatever the scheme is. The main difference is that account data, not just a PIN, is also going to be protected and encrypted. So the payment processor, if it's not doing it, that if they are not doing that already, which pretty much almost everyone does, we'll also have to make sure that they manage and generate the keys for account data protection.
Okay, so really, that there isn't a significant difference. There may be a slight difference in a few situations, but mainly there's not for an acquirer or PSP.
No, not really, no.
Okay, right. Okay, well, thank you very much, Carlos. And I need to wrap it up now because we've fulfilled our time. A few things what I want to say. You can see on the screen my direct contact details. So if anyone has any further questions or want to get in contact with us, please just send me an email or phone me directly. That's fine. Also, we've been asked the question, is the presentation material available? Well, yes, it's been added to our website, which you can see on the bottom of this slide, how to get there. And also, if you look to the right of your screen, above the chat button, you will see handouts -5. What we've done here is we have uploaded onto this platform 2 MasterCard case studies, which actually is the mPOS case studies for our deployments in India, where it's been shown that mPOS has actually added value and in several environments and actually allowed merchants to increase the number of sales, the customer retention, and also the actual value of each sale. So they make a good read. Also, there are data sheets there for the POSmate Smart, which was the product we started with, but also the SPM2 and SPM20. What I would say, all this information is available on our website. So by all means, go to spirepayments.com, go into the library section, and you will find everything you need. Okay, well, thank you very much for everyone for listening. It's been a very successful webinar, a lot of people, and no doubt I will personally see you at a lot of conferences next year where I'll be presenting. So thank you very much, and goodbye to everybody.